when they're granted access to Georgia's Crime Information Center. These laws are governed by the Georgia Computer Systems Protection Act. And if you look down further, it's very clear. We're talking very clearly. 4 criminal offenses, all major felonies, are potential outcomes for those who violate this act. And if you go up even further, it tells you about the interface. The state of Georgia has interface with federal agencies, specifically the U.S. Department of Justice and the FBI. These systems have to work together for the safety and protection of everyone. You need to know who you're dealing with when you run people through these systems. If you look here, National Crime Information Systems, this is an interface that the state of Georgia and all 50 states and U.S. territories are required to link up with. This gives them access to criminal databases across the United States and all territories. This is a vast network. So the answer to the question was posed, did DJ Drama Antonio Johnson have access to this? He absolutely did. You have to have access. How in the world can you do your job? Not only peace officers, if you are collaborating on a certain level, if you have contracts that involve working with people in the justice system, you're going to have access to the system as well. Child welfare CPS has to access the system. This is a system that is a public safety necessity. Violating these laws, you want to say policy? These are federal and state regulations. It's an insult talking about a policy violation. Now let's go to the signature page. Now I didn't put the entire document. Again, go Google it. Go Google anything you see here and look for yourself and read it. You acknowledge at orientation that you understand the roles, the responsibility for your access to these systems. He signed on the straight line. I won't even say dotted line. And obviously, as these policies are updated throughout the years, they're required to get everybody to sign an updated form. He knew exactly what he was doing. I am not accepting that Wayne Williams was clueless as to the fact that Antonio Johnson perpetrated felonies on the state level and the federal level. Straight up, people, that's what happened. There's no way around it. Now, let me tell you a slick move that they try to pull. I didn't say anything at first. I wanted to see what would happen if it marinated. Here's the tell-all, people, that proves Wayne Williams knows good and damn well, along with that post-peace officer standards of training committee, every single one of them is aware that Antonio Johnson violated state laws and federal laws. Read the information on these forms. Here's the kicker, folks. At the top, the violations that Antonio Johnson perpetrated, they say departmental rule violations. Oh my goodness gracious. That says it right there. Tell me the reason they didn't say unauthorized access. The access was unauthorized, people, and they know it. This is why they didn't put it up there, because they don't want to draw attention to it. Front and center. They have to alert. Who do they need to alert? They need to alert the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, and they need to alert the FBI. They didn't do that. They put up here department violations. They couldn't ignore what Kip had submitted to them. You can't ignore that. They had to put it in the documentation about accessing records, but they didn't put it up here. Unauthorized access. Tell me this, people, the form that I just put on the screen, let me go back to that. The Georgia Crime Information Center Awareness Statement. Is this available at Walmart? Do you get this over at Safeway? Do you go to the barber and pick up this form? Who does this form apply to? Does it apply to you? Just a general person in the public? No, it applies to people who have access to the system. Peace officers and others have access. This is not a general purpose document. So for Wayne Williams to say Antonio Johnson had access anyway, so it's a policy violation, that's bullshit. Of course he has access to the system, but accessing someone's records who isn't assigned to him is a felony. It's a felony in Georgia. It's also a felonious offense on the federal level. They just decided, like Smoke said, not to file a report. And that, my friends, is where they messed up. They did not file a report. Why? What is the answer to that question? Now, you know what I'm going to say. Kip and his son aren't white women. Rev G is not a white woman. You need to tell me, had these fools been harassing white folks, that Antonio Johnson's ass would not already have been placed in front of a judge for arraignment? You going to sit here and convince me of that? It's because we are dealing with black on black crime. It's considered less serious. They want for the minimum punishment available to them. They have no choice but to can him. They revoked his certification, but the minimum punishment is considered someone who is not charged with a criminal offense when they committed clear felonies. These are felonies. Why in the hell wasn't Antonio Johnson prosecuted? Oh, it's so funny, wasn't it, everybody, that he can sit around accusing people of crimes. He's perpetrating a crime, but he's not being charged with one. That goes right along with these idiots out here complaining, crying and whining over Antonio Johnson rightfully getting his ass handed to him. They don't like that. They don't want to talk about that, but they sure wanted to talk about falsely accusing Rev G of crimes against children, falsely accusing Kip. It's all well and good that Antonio Johnson was snooping around in his records. Of course he's looking up Kip and his son. They have the same name. You mean to tell me he just clicked on one, Donald Winters? He clicked on every single Donald Winters until he found Kip, until he found his son. Felonies. They said 5 times. 5 felonies he perpetrated on the state level. And he violated the federal law. You see it right here. It tells you accessing the system without authorization is a felony. This is given to peace officers, not people at Walmart. Unauthorized access is going into people's records who you have no business looking at. And they stated that in the report, but they're not putting it here on the top because they want to try to avoid being scrutinized. Why in the hell are they not charging Antonio Johnson, who accessed the system multiple times, but they're charging this dude? I'll leave this up here and I'll put the link at the bottom. Do you see the second paragraph? The Jefferson Police Department requested the GBI investigate. The probation department should have requested that the GBI investigate. It didn't happen. We can't request the GBI investigate and they investigate on that level. What they're going to do, they're going to go to the source, the probation department. They're not going to act solely on what we do directly. They're going to obviously have to go to probation and find out what the hell's going on. They're just not going to take our word for it, but they're taking the Jefferson Police Department word for it because they have the information, the official information, the signed copies. Trust and believe those copies that they present. to the GBI or signed. Then when you go to court, they're going to make sure this information is authentic. They're going to again request the information come from the Jefferson Police Department. Business records produced during the normal course of business. They're not going to just take our word for it. What this police sergeant did was exactly what Antonio Johnson did. Why is it different, the outcome? And I say it's racial. I absolutely believe that with every fiber of my being. And I want to know more about this particular case. And by no means is it the only one. This is what's supposed to happen. You know what? This whole situation is something that is so dangerous, with somebody releasing people's information from protected systems. There's a reason why the information is protected. People have actually been killed. They've been murdered because someone from law enforcement getting information that they have no business accessing. That doesn't even have to be a situation like this. This is simply a police officer or a probation officer or a parole officer. Let's say they get mad at an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend or a relative or anyone. They can just go snooping around in the system and looking for information. Maybe they're trying to find somebody at one point or another in their life. They access these record systems. These record systems have so much information about people. You can't simply turn a blind eye when someone has perpetrated multiple felonies and violated federal law. It says it right here. And I'll pull back on this. He said something to Kip that piqued my interest. You're getting into an area that I can't necessarily discuss, something along those lines. But he already completed the investigation and stated the police weren't contacted. The police should have been contacted. That was a ray of hope when I first heard it. But then I started thinking, you already conducted the investigation and you moved it along. They didn't even give me a chance to go and find the Social Security information. They were fast tracking this. I think they were fast tracking it because they didn't want the media to get a hold of the situation. That's my opinion. They wanted to sweep this under the carpet. This is something that they believe should not be prosecuted. That's bullshit. He committed a crime against the state, against the probation department, and the other people whose records he looked up. Every single one of them. And I'm telling you right now, I don't think that Kip, his son, and Rage Pigs, Laquan Fisher are the only names he looked up. They just simply reported on the outcome of the people whose names were mentioned. I refuse to believe these are the only people who had their privacy rights violated. And if Antonio Johnson was over there talking shit about you, damn it, I'm going to be making my inquiry. He was talking all kinds of shit about me. Do you think I'm going to believe he didn't look us up? Antonio Johnson accepted stolen Social Security information. Do you really believe that he didn't look us up? Nikki Proctor-Wallen was running around here in these YouTube streets telling people I have a criminal record. You don't think that prompted Antonio Johnson to search me? I refuse to believe Kip's son, and Laquan Fisher were the only three people he ever looked up for the 11 and a half years that he was there. I don't believe it. I am going to be making my inquiry, and I suggest you do the same. If Antonio Johnson had a bone to pick with you and it didn't take much to piss him off because he was working so hard to curry favor with these freaks, be certain, best believe, there's every chance he looked you up as well. But I want to get back to the investigator, Rain Williams. I think he wanted to get rid of this case, get rid of it fast, so they can just move along and act like Antonio Johnson was never a part of them. They have their due diligence. They have to respond to the public filing complaints. But to the extent that they didn't pursue prosecution, what drove that decision? That is a question that we deserve to have answers. And you best believe We're going to pursue those answers. I wanted to make sure I came on here and clarified because some things were kind of murky. Now that they're clear, those who feel their rights of privacy were violated, you can make a police report. You can contact the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. You can ask them to ask probation department, why in the hell didn't you file a police report? You can contact the FBI. This is what happened. You don't think the FBI is going to be pissed off that somebody got into their record system, unauthorized access, and was looking up people? Looking up people you don't have business looking up is unauthorized access. And then he brought that shit up here to YouTube? You think the FBI doesn't want to know? You think the Georgia Bureau of Investigation is not interested in that? Why are they interested in this case, but not the one Antonio Johnson did? And the nerve of this fool trying so hard, Antonio Johnson. As for you, propane, what do you think about this? What do you think about the fact that you are running around here accusing my friend of being Eddie Long? And Antonio Johnson got in trouble and got fired based on the fact that he was violating policies that were targeting people for ridicule. It says it in the report, and they're trying to sweep this under the carpet. I suggest you make that call, folks. I'm going to post the information below the title. And of course, I'm going to keep talking about this. It's not going to end. It only ended for them because he got jacked up. He got reported. Had we not reported Antonio Johnson, he would have still been doing the same thing and possibly worse. You know I got more coming your way, folks. In the meantime, you know the drill. Buyer beware.